Hello guys, this is your friend Naruto Audio Fanfics and we are back with a new fanfic. Which is what if Crimpson King Naruto built a vampire harem with Anko, Haku, FemKyuubi, Ino, Kurenai, Mabui, Sakura, Tenten, Tsunade, Tsunami and Yugao Part 2. And if you enjoy this fanfic then please press the like button and subscribe to my channel for more fanfic like this. And now let's start the fanfic. Naruto's mindscape. A foreboding feeling entered the blonde girl as she slowly navigated her way through Naruto's mind. It didn't help that the place looked like an abandoned sewer with thick fog blanketing the ground, coming up to her knees. Eventually, the pathway she walked came to an abrupt stop as what once appeared to be a gate of some kind loomed before her. The bars twisted and broken, and bent outwards, as if something massive and powerful had broken out of its prison. What the hell? Ino murmured to herself, inspecting the broken cage. Forgive the mess. A smooth and suave voice spoke from behind her, startling the poor mind walker as she whirled around to face her uninvited visitor. Only to find the form of Naruto Uzumaki standing a short distance away. I wasn't exactly expecting having company over, otherwise I would have cleaned up. For her part, Ino could only stare at the blonde boy before her. A blush creeping up on her cheeks as Naruto entered his mid without his usual trench coat he wore, allowing the blood-red mesh shirt he wore to display all of his growing muscles in all their glory before the young mind walker, causing her to bite her lip in appreciation. She couldn't deny that her fellow blonde had filled out far more nicely than the stick that was Sasuke Uchiha. I was. The blonde girl stammered, unsure what to do as the blonde boy was not supposed to be allowed to interact with her while she used her mind-walking jutsu. You were curious. Naruto finished for her, flashing her a charming smile, eliciting a small nod in confirmation from the girl. What is this? She asked, finally finding her voice as she gestured at the broken cage. Ah, that, he mused with a small grin. We'll talk about that later, but first, let me clean up this mess. What do you mean? Ino asked, before watching as Naruto simply waved his hand, causing the environment around them to ripple slightly before it began to alter its appearance and location. Instead of the sewer-like system they were in with the broken cage, the two now stood in the center of a massive courtyard as a full moon hung high within the air. Just behind them was a large fountain, except the water flowing from it was red and thick, almost as if it were blood. In the distance, a large manor could be seen. Very extravagant looking, almost as if it were ripped directly from an old horror film she used to watch with her mother when she was a bit younger, looking as if it had been well maintained. Now then, Ms. Ino, Naruto stated politely, gaining the attention of the young mind walker as he gently took her hand into his, dusting her knuckles with a light kiss causing her to blush. How about we meet up later this evening to discuss this, say around 6. Are you asking me out on a date, mister? The young Yamanaka joked, more so to try and ease down the fluttering feeling in her chest. It could be if you want it to be, my dear. He replied smoothly, causing the blush on Ino's cheeks to darken. See you in class, Ino-chan. Without giving her time to reply, the blonde boy faded away. She then noticed the environment around her beginning to fade into a white light, signifying she being ejected from the boy's mind. However, despite her apparent failure at discovering anything new about her blonde counterpart, she couldn't help but feel a bit giddy at the thought of meeting the boy later, in a more private setting. With a smile, she allowed herself to be pushed out of his mind. Later that evening, Ino was making her way down the street, feeling a fluttering feeling in her chest as she made her way to the place Naruto had told her to meet him at. The Hokage monument of all places. Specifically, the head of the Yondaime, which she found slightly odd. Though she supposed there was a reason for it. With a slight giggle and a small skip in her step, she turned the corner. Once again, allowing her imagination to entertain her with various scenarios that could play out once the two blondes were alone. Some more romantic than others. So wrapped up in her musings, that she failed to notice two figures lurking in the shadows, stalking her as if she were their prey. With a nod to each other, the two forms quickly moved to corner the blonde girl as one moved quickly ahead, while the other stayed behind her. Once in position, the individual ahead of Ino swiftly pushed her into an alleyway with a dead end, ensuring there would be no witnesses as to what was about to happen. His partner coming up behind him, effectively blocking off her only escape. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" she demanded, glaring at the two men. Hoping that she wasn't displaying the fear she truly felt. "Well, little lady," one of the men chuckled darkly as his eyes roamed up and down her young body. "You're going to entertain us for the evening. I'm not that kind of girl." Ino growled, her eyes scanning for a means to escape. "That's what the Uchiha brat says." The other spoke, stepping out into the light for her to fully see his face, causing her to gasp out in shock and stumble backwards. Blocking her path was none other than Mizuki, her instructor in the academy. Ino had always had a bad feeling about the man. The way he would leer at her and the other female students in the classroom, especially during the taijutsu spars between the girls. However, another piece of information stood out to her right now. "What do you mean, Uchiha?" Ino inquired, narrowing her eyes at the duo. "Did Sasuke put you up to this?" "That brat." The other male shrugged as he stepped forward, showing him to be a Chunin the blonde Yamanaka heiress had not seen before. "Nah, he wouldn't want to sully his name. Now, why don't you put your mouth to good use?" To get his point across, he lowered his hand to the zipper of his pants, making it very clear what he was expecting her to do. The silver-haired Chunin beside the man mirroring his actions as the two slowly began to stalk towards the young blonde, prompting Ino to back away from the two, before coming to a stop as she backed into the wall that sealed off the alleyway. Fear evident in her eyes as the two drew closer and closer to her. "Well, well, well, what do we have here?" A feminine voice echoed mockingly through the alleyway, prompting both men to stop in their tracks. "Why, it looks like we have a couple of needle-bee rapists, my dear." A male voice echoed as well. Almost instantly, two figures materialized behind the two would-be rapists. The female sporting a fan ponytail, while clad in a tan trench coat. Her arms quick to subdue the nameless Chunin, as she held him in a rear choke hold, forcing his head painfully to one side as her free hand covered his mouth, giving the purple-haired woman access to his neck. Allowing her to bite down on his neck, eliciting a muffled scream from the man. Meanwhile, at the same time, a blonde male appeared behind Mizuki, placing him in the same position his partner was now in. Wasting no time, the blonde also bit down into the neck of his captive, draining him of every ounce of blood he had, while also absorbing his memories and knowledge. Something he was going to have to sort out later, if the flashes he was receiving were any indication. Once done with the two men, the vampire duo dropped the bodies without a care before turning their attention to the horrified blonde girl whom was still trapped within the alley. Now with two vampires stepping into the light, Ino's eyes widened once again in shock as Naruto's face came into view. Trace amounts of blood around his mouth. "Are you okay, Ino-chan?" he inquired, his voice sounding genuinely concerned for her, snapping her out of her shock. "Naruto-kun, you have some." Anko motioned around her mouth, gesturing that he had some blood there. "Oh, right," the blonde commented, quickly cleaning it away. "Thanks hubby Haim. Naruto." Ino stammered as she tentatively took a few steps towards the blonde vampire. Her mind still trying to process what had all happened in the span of a few minutes. "Yo you you. Take a deep breath and calm yourself, Ino-chan. The blonde vampire instructed. You've been through a lot in a short amount of time. No doubt you have questions, and I promise, you will get answers. Upon hearing his words, the weight of what the two men were planning to do to her came crashing down around her, causing her knees to go weak as she stumbled forward, only to be caught by Naruto, allowing her to sob into his chest, as he wrapped his arms around her in a comforting fashion, whispering soothing, comforting words into her ears. So, what do we do with these sacks of shit? Anko inquired, gesturing at the two bodies lying on the ground. He have anything of note? The blonde inquired, rubbing the blonde girl's back as her sobs began to quiet down. Few petty crimes. The snake mistress shrugged in an uncaring manner. Pickpocketing and petty theft, nothing really of note. What about that bastard? Oh, Gigi is going to love this. Naruto grinned with a dark chuckle, turning his head to look at the snake mistress. Good ol' Mizuki here has secretly been meeting with none other than Orochimaru. Even had plans to steal the forbidden scroll for the pedophile. Damn, Hokage-sama is going to love hearing that. Anko commented sarcastically, knowing the old man was going to blow a gasket upon learning the snake bastard had a mole inside the village. Wait. Ino shot up, looking between the two. The Hokage knows about this. The blonde girl gestured to the two of them, and the two dead bodies on the ground. Why don't you go ahead and inform Gigi? Naruto nodded towards the snake mistress, whom was now sporting a knowing smile. After all, I did promise Ino-chan some answers. All right, Casanova. Anko winked at her blonde lover. Just don't do anything I wouldn't do. And what exactly won't you do, hubby Haim? The blonde shot back with a grin. You'll just have to find out for yourself, now won't you? The purple-haired vampire winked before disappearing into a mist, much to Ino's shock. Well, best if we don't linger here ourselves. Naruto commented before tightening his hold on the young Yamanaka. Before she could question what he was doing, she felt a cold wave wash over her as the world around her seemed to dissolve into nothing before everything became a blur of movement for her. Hokage Monument, a few minutes later. So, you and Anko-san, huh? Ino commented, breaking the silence that hung between the two of them since they had arrived at their current location. Yeah, Naruto chuckled, rubbing the back of his head. She's one of my girlfriends, happened about 3 years ago. What do you mean, one of your girlfriends? The blonde girl narrowed her eyes at her fellow blonde. I swear, if you're a pervert playing with their emotions, I will mind you so hard, you'll think your name is Yono. The blonde vampire merely shrugged off the young mind walker's threat. Knowing full well at her current stage, she wouldn't be able to do anything. The only reason she was able to get inside his mind earlier today was simply because he had allowed her to. Nah, it's nothing like that. I leave the skirt chasing to that horn dog Kiba. He replied as he took a seat next to the Yamanaka, overlooking the village below them. While not official until I become a genin, I am the last of my clan, or clans rather. As such, the old man will be placing me in the Clan Restoration Act. Ino calmed slightly upon hearing his explanation. Being from an established clan herself, she understood the workings of the Clan Restoration Act, or CRA for short. For last surviving males, it was every pervert's fantasy, having a harem of girls surrounding them. It usually didn't end well for the women who were forced into it, as they were treated more as objects than human beings. It was even worse for the last surviving female clan members, as they were reduced to nothing more than a breeding stock with no say whatsoever as to who would help conceive. Either way, it was a loveless union. However, something about how Naruto and Anko interacted with each other made her feel that something was different. The young mind walker could see that there was love between the two known pariahs of the village. Perhaps a kindred spirit in one another. So, Naruto mirrored. Who's the other girl? Ino asked. Is it that redhead that came to visit you earlier today? Who? Yoko-chan. Nah, she is someone I consider precious to me, but we're not at that level. Whether that changes in the future remains to be seen. The blonde vampire shrugged. But to answer your question, my other girlfriend is Cruel Teps. And, she's the one who changed me. Changed you? The girl questioned, before it dawned on her. You mean, you remember that day, 3 years ago Aruka held me after class? He asked, giving her a clear picture as to when it all started. Yeah, Ino nodded, recalling the day in question. Aruka-sensei blamed you for knocking over the bookshelf, even though you were nowhere near it. It was unfair, because it was your birthday too. Yeah, he nodded in agreement. What you didn't know was that it was all a setup. Aruka had purposely singled me out to keep me as late as possible while a mob gathered with one purpose. To kill me. Hearing this, Ino's eyes widened as she let out a gasp in shock. You see, the Yondaime didn't kill the Kyuubi like everyone thinks he did, as there is no way to kill a being of pure chakra. Naruto explained, preparing to drop a massive bomb on his fellow blonde. So, he sealed it away into an infant child, born that night. You. The girl all but whispered as her mind digested the information she was being given. However, her mind quickly snapped to the broken cage she saw within the young teen's mind. The cage, that held. It used to, yes. He nodded in confirmation. However, that night 3 years ago, the villagers nearly succeeded. They tortured me for hours before one moved in to deliver the final blow. A lightning jutsu to my chest. Shortly afterwards is when Cruel-chan found me at death's door. She gave me an offer, dire a second chance at life. So she changed you into a vampire. It felt weird for her to say it out loud, despite seeing the proof firsthand. What with Naruto and Anko both appearing out of nowhere when the two Chunin were about to rape her. Especially with the way both had dispatched her would-be attackers. I know, sounds weird, right? He chuckled. But, you walk in the daylight, and, first off, forget everything you've read or seen in movies about vampires. Naruto stated. The only thing that is true is that I drink blood, however, I can eat normal foods as well, which thank Kami for that. Could you imagine I would be if I couldn't eat ramen anymore? Ino couldn't help but giggle at this. You dork, of course you would be more worried about ramen than anything else. The blonde girl said, still giggling slightly. But what happened to the, you know? Is it free or something? She is free, yes. He replied, gauging the teenage girl's reaction. In fact, you saw her earlier today. For a moment, Ino narrowed her eyes before they shot open to comical proportions. That woman that came to you this afternoon. She exclaimed with a mixture of shock, fear, and a bit of excitement. Correct. Ino-chan. Naruto replied. As you guessed, Yoko-chan is the Kyuubi no Yoko. However, there is more that happened that night than many know. Now, you are no doubt going to ask how she got out if she is supposed to be sealed within me. Ino nodded in confirmation. Well, the Reaper death seal the Yondaime used linked my soul to the foxes. Short version, if I die, she dies. He continued. However, part of becoming a vampire involves dying in order to be reborn. Which created a paradox within the seal. I died, but my soul didn't pass on. So in the seal's confusion, it ejected Yoko-chan. The young mind walker remained silent for a handful of minutes as her mind tried to comprehend everything she had been told and rationalize it. First and foremost, the boy she had developed a crush on over the past 3 years was a vampire, and a hot one at that. Secondly, the Kyuubi was now free walking around the village. Does the Hokage know about, well, everything? Yeah, he knows. He replied. He knows about Yoko-chan, and he knows about me being a vampire, as well as Anko-chan. As well as anyone else I turn to bring into the coven. Cruel-chan has stated many times that she wants me to find compatible mates to bring into the fold to help bring her family back to its former glory. How does it work? Ino inquired, a bit curious about the blonde vampire's circumstances. Being a vampire, I mean. Well, as I said. Forget everything you think you know from books and movies. Naruto reiterated. As you have seen, I can walk in sunlight no problem. Holy ground has no effect whatsoever, and as Cruel-chan once told me, while extremely painful, getting staked in the heart will not kill me. Not to mention, I can pretty much regenerate from any injury. And drinking blood? Ino asked. You and Anko were talking about reporting something about Mizuki working for some traitor. Almost as if you could see his memories by drinking his blood. Very perceptive, Ino-chan. He smiled, causing her to blush at the compliment. Yes, by drinking someone's blood, I gain glimpses into the person's memories. If they are shinobi, I can also learn their techniques, so to speak. And early on, I had problems taking on the person's personality for a short amount of time. Anko-chan had a blast when I adopted her personality for a few hours after I turned her. Ino was quiet as she stared off over the village as night had fallen over it. Mulling over what she had just been told about her fellow blonde drinking blood, and the perks of doing so. She had developed a bit of a fascination with blood a few years ago, when her father had the great idea to take her where he had worked one day. Hoping to give her an insight to what he did within the T&I building. However, she was more focused on watching Ibiki and Anko work on a capture spy. Hard to believe that even then, the young snake mistress was a vampire then. Can you turn me? She finally asked, prompting Naruto to raise an eyebrow at her question. What about Sasuke? He inquired. Thought you were competing with Sakura for his heart. Ino could only snort at this, though she did only have herself to blame for continuing to put up the act. If only for her rival's sake. I could care less about the limp asshole. She huffed. I only continued that charade to push forehead along. In truth, I kind of had a crush on, well, you. For his part, Naruto was a little taken aback by her confession. While he knew the young mind walker had become curious of him, he was unaware that it had developed into an actual crush. Peering over at the blonde girl, he could make out a light blush adorning her cheeks. You are aware that in order to change you, I would have to drink from you and bring you to the Shinigami's doorstep. As such, I would learn your clan's techniques that you know. He explained. One thing he knew about the Yamanaka heiress, was that once she had made up her mind about something, there was no changing it. After which, you will have to consume my blood, willingly given. He finished. Is it painful? She asked, turning to face him. Well, I couldn't really tell you. Had a hole in my chest with Cruel-chan changed me. He chuckled dryly. As for Anko-chan, unsure since she is a bit of a masochist herself. However, there is one last thing you should know. What's that? If I turn you, you will become one of my mates. The blonde vampire stated. Without a word, Ino turned to face him, removing her hair from the side of her neck closest to him. It was an unspoken invitation. Nodding slightly, he reached out and drew her into his warm embrace. Bringing their faces mere centimeters apart. Allowing cerulean to meet light blue, before he leaned in and captured her lips in a tender kiss. Prompting the young mind walker to close her eyes and moan softly into the kiss. Leaving her lips, he trailed soft kisses along her jawline and neck before stopping and giving one last kiss before he sunk his fangs into her neck, allowing her crimson life blood to flow into his throat. As he did so, flashes of memories of her various confrontations with Sakura over Sasuke to the gradual shifting of her attention towards himself. Feeling her starting to go limp and cold, he released her neck and moved back to her face, seeing her eyes barely open with only a faint flicker of life within them. Biting the inside of his cheek to draw blood, he captured her lips once more, pushing his blood down into her throat. Watching as she swallowed it. Picking her up, bridal style. Naruto disappeared into the night with the Yamanaka heiress in his arms. Though as he did so, one thought passed through his mind. Shit, Inoichi is going to kill me when he finds out. Hokage Tower, day of graduation. I request Sasuke Uchiha, Sakura Haruno, and Naruto Uzumaki as candidates of Team 7. The cycloptic Jonin stated, not looking up from his orange book. Hiruzen couldn't help but frown at the silver-haired Jonin's request. Team 7 is infamous of being comprised of the two top genin and the dead last of the class. The elder village leader pointed out. Since Naruto had claimed the title of Rookie of the Year, whilst Sasuke was the runner-up for the title, much to the Uchiha's frustration. Sakura had just barely edged out Ino for the spot of Kunoichi of the Year. Is there any particular reason why you are requesting 3 of the top students for your team, Jonin Hatake? As a matter of fact, there is Hokage-sama. Kakashi replied, closing his book to give the elder man his full attention. First and foremost, as the only Sharingan user within the village, I am the only one qualified to train Sasuke when he awakens his own. After he does unlock his own Sharingan, there will no limit to what the boy could learn. As for the Haruno girl, she is essentially a blank slate as she has in her book smarts, she can literally become anything she sets her mind to. Be it a genjutsu specialist or a medic. As for Naruto, as the last surviving student of Sensei, I owe it to his memory to take care of the boy. Hiruzen mulled over what the masked Jonin's explanation. Unable to find any deceit in the mont's words, though he still had an uneasy feeling. Still, with the extra training and instruction the boy had already received from Cruel, Anko, and even the Kyuubi herself, he was sure the young vampire would be able to take care of himself regardless of almost any threat that came his way. Not to mention the boy's other means of acquiring new abilities. I will take your request under consideration, Jonin Hatake. The elder man finally answered, before turning to the other potential Jonin sensei. Now, Kurenai Yuhi. I, Kurenai Yuhi, request Hinata Hyuga, Naruto Uzumaki, and Shino Aburame as candidates for Team 8. The Genjutsu mistress stated, earning a glare from Kakashi. This team combination would make for a great tracking and assault team, with Hinata and Shino supplying the means for tracking, while Naruto could be the powerhouse of the team. Not to mention with his latest academic scores, Naruto could also offer a strategic mind to the team. Hiruzen could only smile softly at the freshly promoted Jonin. While she made a compelling argument for her team selection, the old fire shadow knew that she had a more personal reason for requesting the Uzumaki boy. Like Anko, the young Genjutsu mistress, along with the others dubbed the Ice Queens, adored the blonde. Though he was fairly certain that the only Ice Queen that was aware of Naruto's current status was Anko herself, for obvious reasons. You make a very compelling argument for your team, Jonin Yuhi. He replied, taking a puff from his wooden pipe. Like Jonin Hatake, I will take your request into consideration. If I may, why don't you take Kiba Inuzuka for your team? Kakashi offered, hoping to sway the woman away from Naruto. His clan's taijutsu style will make him an excellent assault member for your team, and if I recall correctly, he is quite smitten with the Hyuga girl. Perhaps you should consider the Inuzuka for your own team, Hatake. Kurenai retorted, as you seem to be focusing on a pure assault team anyways. At least I am attempting to balance my team to be well-rounded. Don't kid yourself, Yuhi. Everyone knows the only reason you want the boy is due to your personal attachment to him. Kakashi shot back, narrowing his exposed eye at the woman. Says the man who flat out said the only reason you want Naruto is due to your connection to your late sensei. The ruby-eyed woman rebutted. What is your plan for training him? So far, you've only given a detailed plan for the Uchiha. What of the Haruno girl? It seems the only one you are truly interested in training from your team is the Uchiha boy. You would do well to keep silent about matters you know nothing of, Yuhi. The masked Jonin glared. I owe it to Obito's sacrifice to train Sasuke, and I owe it to Minato-sensei's memory to take care of the Uzumaki boy. Enough. Hiruzen exclaimed, having heard enough of the two arguing over Naruto. Sorry, Hokage-sama, the ruby-eyed woman stated with a slight bow before casting a glare at the masked pervert. Now then, Asuma, the elder man turned to his son. Well, seeing as the Uzumaki brat is in such high demand. The bearded Jonin began with a slight chuckle. I'll go with reforming the Ino-Shika-Cho combination with their kids. Why fix what's not broken, right? Very well, I will take all of your requests into consideration. Hiruzen stated, eyeing each Jonin in the room. You will have my decision within the hour, you are dismissed. Both Kakashi and Kurenai cast each other a piercing glare before exiting the room, something that was not missed by the other occupants, causing the elder village leader to let out a sigh in exasperation. Good luck, Pops. Asuma chuckled before he departed out the door, leaving the aging fire shadow alone to look over the files of each the graduating members and genin hopefuls. In the corner of the room, a purple bat perched on the ceiling, had witnessed the entire exchange. With a small squeak, it disappeared in a plum of smoke. Academy, classroom. Pale eyes swept across the classroom of graduates as the Hyuga heiress awaited for the pair of oddities to arrive. 6 months ago, Hinata had noticed both Naruto and Ino had begun to arrive nearly at the same time every morning, before going their separate ways. While the Hyuga heiress could simply mark it up as a coincidence of the two running into each other while on the way to the academy, it was not a coincidence that the young Yamanaka's chakra signature had changed drastically. What was once a pale light blue energy that ebbed and flowed through her body, was now a dark, blood-red color, with wisps of black flowing outwards. Heavy and dense. Almost inhuman. Hinata wasn't the only one to notice the change in the young Yamanaka. A few rows down from where the Hyuga heiress was seated, was a pink-haired girl and former best friend, and now former rival for the last Uchiha's heart, Sakura Haruno. Just like the Hyuga, the Pinkett had noticed shifts in her rival's mannerisms, as well as her posture and body language when she entered the classroom. Not to mention the girl's changes in how she associated with her fellow blonde. She couldn't put her finger on it, but Sakura knew that something had changed her former best friend. Especially over the last few months as the blonde-haired girl and slowly stopped competing with her for the Uchiha's attention. When Sakura had confronted her about it, Ino had merely shrugged her shoulders and stated that she had decided to focus more on her future career as a kunoichi, rather than chase after a boy. Leaving the Pinkett speechless at the proclamation. Sakura, however, was cut from her musing as the individual in question had entered the classroom, prompting the Pinkett to look towards the doorway. Without paying any heed to the numerous boys that had turned their attention towards her, Ino had quickly and quietly made her way to her seat, and as usual, Naruto had entered the classroom mere seconds behind her, causing the Pinkett to frown. Sakura had noticed that the blonde Yamanaka had become more cordial to her fellow blonde over the months, which only served to feed the jealousy rising up within her. It had been 3 years since that morning. 3 years since the whiskered blonde had ceased pestering her for dates, leaving a sense of emptiness to linger within her. Why do I smell blood? The voice of Kiba sounded, catching the girl's attention as the feral boy sniffed the air curiously before slowly turning towards the blonde Yamanaka girl, eyeing her cautiously. And why is it coming from you? Told you we shouldn't have stopped for a bite to eat. The whiskered vampire commented with a slight laugh, through the mental link he now shared with his fellow blonde. An ability created thanks to the knowledge he had received from Ino when he turned her. Which had only expanded as the newly turned vampire had delved deeper into her clan's jutsu library. Oh bite me, I was hungry and that asshole had it coming. Ino scoffed in return. Besides, it's your fault anyways for not taking me on last night's hunt. I believe I have bitten you already, my dear. Naruto retorted with a grin. As for last night, your father was quite vigilante in his guard. I do recall him muttering something about a boy stealing his princess away. Ino could only mentally groan at her overprotective father. Of course, she couldn't deny that she was partially to blame for his reinvigorated vigil to preserve his little princess's innocence, since she had let it slip that she was truly interested in a boy, hoping to ease her father into the idea before she formally introduced him to Naruto. And now, her plan to ease her father into her having a boyfriend had cost her a night of hunting in delicious, fresh blood. Kiba is still waiting for an answer, my little vampiress. Naruto reminded her, since she had been silent for a handful of seconds since Kiba's nose had pointed out the scent of blood coming from the blonde girl. Hey, watch this, she replied with a sinister grin before she turned her attention back to the Inuzuka boy. You had best keep your nose to yourself, mutt. Growled the blonde vampiress. And out of personal matters that do not concern you. Upon hearing the insinuation, Kiba quickly paled and backed away. Memories of his old sister beating him mercilessly when he had asked a similar question just a few years back, while his mother laughed up a storm at his cluelessness, not lifting a finger to save him from his embarrassed older sister. Something about needing to learn when and when not to open his mouth. Sorry. The Inuzuka boy quickly apologized before retreating to his assigned seat, much to the amusement of a whiskered blonde, whom shot an approving look towards his blonde counterpart. All right. A commanding voice sounded throughout the classroom, prompting all the graduates to cease their activities and turn their attention to their sensei for the past 3 years, Yugao Azuki. Get to your assigned seats so that we can go over team assignments. Instantly, all chatter had ceased and each of the graduates were seated in their assigned seats, awaiting for the purple-haired woman to announce which teams they were to be placed on. Some, like Sakura, were silently praying to be paired with her destined love. While others were more concerned with how troublesome it was going to be in the future. First off, Yugao began, once the class had settled. I would like to congratulate all of you for your accomplishments and announce this year's Rookie and Kunoichi of the Year. The former Anbu captain allowed silence to hang in the air for a brief moment, allowing the excitement and tension to build up. The Rookie of the Year is Naruto Uzumaki. As expected, hardly anyone applauded the whiskered blonde's achievement, with the exception of Ino, Shino, Shikamaru, and Choji. However, the young vampire didn't care, merely giving a bow in respect to Yugao, and politely thanking her. And this year's Kunoichi of the Year goes to Ino Yamanaka. Congratulations to the both of you. Now, from this day forward, you are no longer mere students, but full-fledged shinobi of Konohagakure. Each of you will be divided into a 3-man cell, a team. Each team will be monitored by a Jonin sensei, who will coach, guide, and instruct you as you become familiar with your various assignments. Minutes ticked on as Yugao began to list the various teams, some of which earned cheers of celebration of being assigned to a particular team with their friend, crush, or even due to being assigned their favorite Jonin. while others sported downcast expressions due to being separated from whom they had wanted to be on a team with. Now, Team 7 will consist of Hinata Hyuga, Kiba Inuzuka, and Sasuke Uchiha. Yugao read off, getting a silent nod from the Hyuga heiress, and a whoop of celebration from Kiba, and a grunt from the Uchiha. Your Jonin-sensei will be Kakashi Hatake, better get comfortable. What does that mean, Yugao-sensei? Hinata inquired with a curious look. You'll see. The purple-haired woman smirked before turning her attention to the list. Shino Aburame, Sakura Haruno, and Naruto Uzumaki, you three will make up Team 8, your Jonin-sensei is Kurenai Yuhi. The only noise that came from the selected names was a low groan from the Pinkett, lamenting that Kami had forsaken her and tore her from her one, true love. Causing the whiskered vampire to roll his eyes at the girl's overdramatic antics. Team 9 is still active. Yugao continued, ignoring the drama the Pinkett was putting on. Team 10 will be Ino Yamanaka, Shikamaru Nara, and Choji Akamichi. Your Jonin-sensei will be Asuma Sarutobi. Your Jonin-sensei will arrive in an hour. Until then, you are free to chat amongst yourself, do some extra training, or get something to eat. Troublesome. The Nara boy groaned. They reformed the infamous Ino-Shika-Cho combination. What did you expect? The rotund boy next to him offered as he munched on a bag of chips. It was obvious it was going to happen the moment all of us ended up in the same class. Still troublesome. The boy yawned before turning his attention to their only female teammate, and childhood friend, whom had her eyes closed. Figured you would be upset about not being on Sasuke's team, Ino. Opening her eyes, she peered over at the lazy Nara and simply shrugged. Guess it was too troublesome for you to keep up on current events. The Yamanaka chuckled. I haven't been chasing after the Uchiha for 6 months now. Decided to start focusing on my career instead of boys. Shikamaru merely grunted in agreement. Hey, Shino, Sakura. Naruto called out, catching the attention of his two teammates. Follow me, I know where to meet our sensei. Anko-chan told you, didn't she? Ino mentally questioned her sire. That, and I know how Nei-chan is. The whiskered blonde replied. Have fun, Naruto-kun. The vampiress mentally smiled. I'll see you later, Ino-chan. And how would you know where our sensei is? Sakura questioned, resisting the urge to call him an idiot like she had in the past. Well, I know her personally. Naruto replied with a shrug. She's like a sister to Anko-chan. Sakura flinched slightly, hearing the affectionate chan suffix that had so often accompanied her own name being attached to another woman's name, causing a small sense of jealousy to bubble up inside her. If you know where our sensei is, then we should make haste, Uzumaki-san. Shino spoke. All right then, follow me. The Jasmine Dragon. So, get the team you wanted, Nai-chan? The snake mistress inquired, as she took a sip from her cup of tea. Got 2 out of the 3 I wanted. Kurenai sighed. Hatake got Hinata. Suppose Hokage-sama had to make some sort of compromise. However, I have to say that I am not as disappointed as I thought I would be. Oh, well, if I am being honest with myself, I kind of wanted Whiskers on my team over Hinata. The Genjutsu mistress admitted with a grin as she used the snake mistress's nickname for the whiskered blonde. I knew I never should have told you all my nickname for him. That's my name for him. Anko stated before she thought of something. But why would you want Naruto-kun over Hinata? Wasn't she like a surrogate daughter to you? She's changed. Kurenai sighed, putting her teacup down on the table. Over the past 3 years, she has become more distant, and while not exactly cold, she seems to be more isolated now, refusing to let anyone in. Something happened 3 years ago that caused this, but she won't say what. Anko remained silent as she pondered what the Genjutsu mistress had said about the Hyuga heiress. 3 years ago was also when Naruto was attacked on that fateful night, and as a result, was changed into the vampire he was today, which ultimately led to her being changed as well. Could the shy little wallflower have witnessed the attack on Naruto? The snake mistress narrowed her eyes in contemplation. The only thing I had managed to get from her, one of the rare few times I could get her to talk, was that she was looking for answers about someone, but refused to say who. Kurenai continued, unaware of her friend's train of thought. Yup. She witnessed what happened that night. Anko thought to herself. But how much did she see? Guess I am going to have to find out. Suppose I should go meet my team. The Genjutsu mistress stated as she moved to get up. Don't want to develop a certain bad habit from a certain lazy, perverted jonin. However, before Kurenai could leave, she was stopped by the snake mistress, whom was sporting a knowing grin as she held up her left hand, showing a small snake wrapped around it, hissing into the young woman's ear. Allowing the implications to set in, regardless if they were true or not. Actually, they are on their way here, she replied, earning a raised eyebrow from the ruby-eyed woman. Using your snakes to spy on them. The ruby-eyed woman lightly chastised, merely shaking her head at her friend's antics. I always keep tabs on where my Whisker-kun is. Anko teased. And here they are. Upon saying that, 3 freshly graduated genin rounded the corner with Naruto in the lead, his black trench coat flowing in his wake, exposing the interior crimson-red lining. Behind the blonde vampire was Shino, whose face was barely visible through his oversized trench coat and sunglasses that hid his eyes. Pulling up the rear, was a sullen Sakura Haruno, silently lamenting not being on the same team as her precious, Sasuke-kun. Hubby Haim. The whiskered blonde grinned as he approached the 2 women, greeting his mate and fellow vampire first before turning his attention towards the Genjutsu mistress. Nai-chan, or should I call you Kurenai-sensei now? It would be appropriate if you were to refer to me as sensei while we are on the clock, so to speak, Naruto-kun. Kurenai smiled at the whiskered teen, before looking to the rest of her potential genin team. Now, how about you 3 sit down and join us? Nodding, the 3 genin each claimed a chair of their own around the circular table. Shino taking the seat closest to Kurenai, while Sakura claimed the one just next to him. Naruto, however, was promptly pulled into Anko's lap, much to the Genjutsu mistress's ire. Anko, could you keep your hands off of Naruto-kun for 5 minutes? Kurenai sighed as she and the other 2 genin looked on as the snake mistress firmly wrapped her arms around the whiskered teen's waist, pulling him close to her. While the ruby-eyed beauty was well aware of the relationship between the 2 pariahs, she had hoped her sister-like figure would at least restrain herself long enough for them to get past the team introductions. Of course, this was Anko she was talking about. On the other side of the table, the lone Pinkett could only witness the spectacle with a tinge of jealousy. Her inner persona finding it ironic that her outer persona had told the blonde teen countless times to just leave her alone, and now that the boy had done just that, she craved the attention he once showered over her. While Naruto wasn't rude to her outer persona by any means, he was simply apathetic towards her. Is this how he felt growing up? Sakura pondered, well aware of how isolated Naruto's childhood was. Her mother had encouraged her to become friends with the boy, but she had fallen in with the rest of the crowd and ignored her mother's advice. I suppose we should continue on with our team introductions, before Anko violates my student. Kurenai relented, seeing there was no way to stop the snake mistress. Guess I'll start off first. My name is Kurenai Yuhi. The ruby-eyed woman began. I like Genjutsu, my sister in all but blood Anko, even if she does act a little eccentric at times. This earned the snake mistress sticking her tongue out at Kurenai. Anyways, As for the things I dislike, I abhor perverts and rapists. I also don't like those that think women are inferior to men and are only good for bearing children, and lastly, those that don't respect the art and true strength of genjutsu. As for my dreams, I hope to someday meet the right man to start a family with, and pass down my title as genjutsu mistress to my daughter. I thought you were dating Asuma, Nai-chan. Anko inquired with a raised brow. Didn't work out. Kurenai sighed. While I was planning for a future with kids and marriage, he only wanted to have fun. Though, at least he was upfront about it and didn't try to string me along like other guys have tried to do. Anyways, moving on, why don't you introduce yourself, Anko, since I know you are going to be hanging around my team on your downtime. Don't try to deny it, hubby Haim. Naruto commented, earning a pout from the purple-haired woman. Fine, I am the unsensual Anko Mitarashi. Anko began, purring the last part into Naruto's ear while giving it a lick, causing a shiver to run up the whiskered vampire's spine. Also causing Kurenai's eye to twitch. My likes are Naruto-kun here, Cruel-chan, blood, and the screams of pain and agony from my playmates in the T&I department. Not to mention, you love the thrill of the hunt. Naruto added mentally, earning a silent chuckle from the snake mistress. As for my dislikes, well, that is no small list. But at the top is traitors, rapists, and ignorant fools. My dreams, well, I am looking forward to killing Pedo Maru slowly and painfully, before starting a family with my Naruto-kun here. Silence hung over the group for a handful of seconds as each of them, minus Naruto, gawked at the snake mistress. A little unsettled by her blatant love of blood and torturing people. However, what stuck out to the Pinkett was how Anko's dream of building a family with Naruto. Is this why he's been ignoring me? Sakura mused with a small frown. Because he started going out with her. Moving on. Kurenai coughed, snapping the Pinkett out of her musings. You're up, Naruto. Alright. The whiskered vampire grinned, leaning back into the snake mistress. My name is Naruto Uzumaki. My likes are my hubby Haim, Cruel-chan, and learning new techniques. There was an underlying implication, which Anko had caught right away, prompting her to chuckle silently to herself, since the main way Naruto learned new techniques was from feeding from various shinobi and such whom were affiliated with the so-called untouchables. My hobbies include training, pulling pranks on various well-deserved victims, reading, and gardening. He smiled as he saw the shocked look wash across the various members of his team, as none would have thought the once hyperactive blonde would have such a hobby as gardening. My dislikes are perverts, rapists, traitors, those that are too arrogant, and a certain masked bastard. He continued with a scowl as he thought of the bastard that drove the lightning jutsu into his chest that night 3 years ago. As for my dreams, I simply aim to become a shinobi my parents would be proud of and start a large family and restore my clans. What do you mean clans? Sakura inquired with a confused expression on her face as she gazed at the blonde across the table from her. The old man is probably going to announce it after our team is official, so you'll have to wait for then. All I know is that it's going to be entertaining to watch. Naruto grinned before turning to the bug user on the team. I believe it's your turn, Shino-san. Very well, my name is Shino Aburame. Shino began in his monotone voice. My likes are bugs, my clan. My hobbies include reading, studying my clan's jutsus and bug hunting. My dislikes are those that needlessly kill bugs, and pesticides. My dream is simply to expand my clan, by finding someone suitable to marry. Very good. The ruby-eyed woman nodded, before turning her attention to her last student. Your turn. My name is Sakura Haruno. The Pinkett started but froze as she began to consider what her likes, dislikes, and hobbies were. Her initial reaction was to proclaim her love for her Sasuke-kun, but that thought died in her throat. With her rival no longer competing against her for the Uchiha's heart, her victory, if she could call it that, felt hollow. Especially considering the desired prize had shown absolutely no interest. My likes are reading, mostly romance novels and reading about Iryo jutsus. My dislikes are, well, I guess I don't really have any now that I think about it. Which was true. She couldn't honestly say she didn't like Naruto anymore, since he had adhered to her wish and had completely left her alone for the past 3 years. While Ino had ceased her pursuit of the Uchiha just over 6 months ago, so she had no reason to dislike Ino either. My hobbies are hosting tea ceremonies, and flower pressing. My dreams. I don't know yet. She finished with a small frown. It seems since Ino-chan officially stopped chasing after the Tem, Sakura doesn't know what to do with her life anymore. Naruto mused through his mental link to Anko. Not surprising, since she put the prick above everything. The snake mistress replied to her lover. Still has fangirl tendencies though, going to have to get that out of her. I am sure you and Nai-chan can handle that. He mentally grinned, earning a sadistic grin from the purple-haired vampiress. Each of you are truly unique individuals, some more than others, Anko. Kurenai fake coughed the snake mistress's name, causing said woman to lightly glare at her. Anyways, we will be meeting tomorrow morning at 7 to administer the real genin test. Real genin test? Sakura questioned, looking at her sensei in shock. Come on, you didn't think the test we took today was all that was required to be official genin, did you? Naruto inquired. If it were that easy, we would have not only the largest shinobi force in the elemental nations, we would also have the highest mortality rate as well, due to too many undertrained genin with false ideals of what it is to be a shinobi. Naruto-kun is right, the genjutsu mistress stated. The exam at the academy was just to see who had the potential. The real test begins tomorrow. Training ground 8, don't be late and be sure to eat a good breakfast. Saying her piece, Kurenai disappeared in a flurry of sakura petals, leaving the 3 genin and snake mistress alone. One by one, the 3 members that made up Team 8 slowly went their own ways, until it was only Naruto and Anko remaining. Though it was clear the Sakura had wanted to lag behind, hoping to get some answers to her questions, though had opted to save it for tomorrow morning. Well, suppose I should get back to the T&I building, before Ibiki throws a fit. Anko sighed, not really wanting to get up, but she had her duty to fulfill. Oh, before I forget, keep an eye on that Hyuga girl. She may have witnessed what happened that night. Naruto nodded, understanding the implications of what was said. Explains why she keeps me at a distance now. The whiskered vampire mused before turning his attention back to his mate. Try to behave, will you, Anko-chan, and if you're a good girl, I'll take you out hunting tonight. Are you implying I am not a good girl? She grinned, pressing her body into him with a saucy grin. Naruto merely smirked as he captured her lips with his own, allowing his blood to flow into her mouth from a cut from his tongue that he had freshly done. As the crimson fluid touched her throat, the snake mistress let out a pleasurable moan. Seconds passed before the two separated, a glazed look in the woman's eyes. See you tonight, my hubby Haim. Naruto smiled, earning a grunt in confirmation. Wordlessly, both vampires disappeared into a cloud of mist, going their separate ways. Training Ground 13. Hatred burned in the exposed eye of one Kakashi Hatake as he glared down from his vantage point up in the trees at the training field below as the first member of the now official Team 8, or as Anko had dubbed it, Team Fangs, entered the training field. To the cycloptic Jonin, the blonde whiskered teen that had just arrived was a mockery to the memory of his late sensei. Even more so after his failed attempt to avenge his fallen mentor 3 years ago. He had hoped to remedy that failed attempt by playing at the elder village leader's heartstrings, and get the boy placed on his team. From there, he had various plans for the demon's demise. One such plan, he had visualized, was to use the Haruno girl's obsession over Sasuke, by holding the Uchiha at knife point in a mock hostage situation and order her to kill Naruto, and if she had actually followed orders, well, all the better in his eyes. Should that fail, and the girl not succeed or refuse to follow the order, he would have simply orchestrated a training accident between the Uzumaki and Sasuke. Of course, after ensuring the blonde was significantly under-trained while giving the Uchiha access to numerous higher-ranking Kaiden jutsu, as that was the Uchiha's natural elemental affinity, with very few from the now nearly extinct clan having affinity to other elements. Hitaki had also planned to use Sasuke's status of being the last loyal Uchiha, to avoid any consequences befalling him, unlike the Haruno girl, whom would have been stripped of her shinobi status and potentially imprisoned. Even if the girl's mother was on the civilian council. Lastly, if all else had failed, he would have ensured the boy's demise on their first mission outside the village. Either by allowing a bandit to deliver the final blow or even enemy shinobi to dispatch him, or do it himself away from the eyes of the other two and/or client, depending on what the mission would have been. However, all of his planning had been rendered moot, thanks to that red-eyed bitch. While Kakashi had taken into account that others, if only few in number, would show an interest for the blonde brat, he had disregarded them as a negligent factor, banking entirely too much on an emotional old man. Instead, Kurenai Yuhi, an up-and-coming Jonin Kunoichi, had derailed his entire scheme with a precise focus of logical assessments she had planned for her team as a whole, which admittedly, had made a far better case for her than he would have liked to admit. After the teams had been announced, Hitaki had attempted to coerce the famed Genjutsu mistress into swapping Kiba and Hinata for Naruto and Sakura, even attempting to goad her into it by dangling the Hyuga girl in front of her, as it was no secret that the ruby-eyed woman had viewed the girl as a daughter. However, much to the silver-haired Jonin's disdain, Kurenai had stood firm in her team. Kakashi had figured it had something to do with the snake whore that had constantly accompanied the team, and how said woman was constantly around the Uzumaki brat. "What are you doing here, Hitaki?" A voice broke him from his musing, prompting him to turn to face the person who had intruded upon his train of thoughts. Anko. Kakashi replied evenly, as he peered at the snake mistress. While he had never thought highly of the woman before, due to her being the former apprentice of one Orochimaru of the Sannin, Konoha's biggest traitor to date since Madara Uchiha, not to mention the fact that the woman had aggressively turned down any man that dared approach her, all for a brat that was 5 years her junior. However, in the past 3 years, he could feel a sort of dark and predatory aura rolling off of her with the faint scent of blood whenever she entered the same room he was in, or if she was within close proximity, as she was now. Making him feel increasingly uneasy around her. "I swear to Kami, Hitaki." Anko hissed. "If this is another one of your piss-poor attempts to get Nai-chan to trade you Naruto-kun for that flea-ridden mud of a genin, I am going to rip that Sharingan out of your eye socket and shove it up your porn-loving. Ma Anko-san, that's not nice to threaten a fellow Konoha shinobi with such unneeded violence." The masked man waved off in a relaxed fashion. "As for Uzumaki, I still feel he would benefit under me far more than Yuhi-san. Of course, in a village full of shinobi and kunoichi, you're the only one capable of training him." Anko scoffed as she leaned up against the tree trunk, the sarcasm in her voice evident. "You just don't know when to give up, do you?" "Of course not." Another voice spoke up behind the masked Jonin before Kakashi could respond, prompting him to spin around, only to be met by the whiskered teen he had just been observing. After all, how can he get a second chance to kill me if I am not on his team? Kakashi narrowed his eyes at the blonde vampire as Anko chortled from where she stood, which had only served to feed his anger further. What's the matter, Hatake Tem? Naruto taunted with a grin. Upset that Hokage GG put me out of your reach so you can't try and shove that lightning jutsu into my chest again. You should be dead and rotting in the Shinigami's stomach that night 3 years ago. Kakashi snarled out, since it was obvious Anko was clearly well aware of his attempt on the boy's life that night, 3 years ago. The fact that you are still alive only proves that you are a demon. PFF'd. You clearly don't understand any Kekkei Genkei that isn't the Sharingan. Naruto scoffed. Otherwise, if you were half the shinobi you claim to be, you would have known that the Uzumaki clan were known not only for their chakra chains, monstrous chakra reserves and stamina, but were also known to have unparalleled regenerative abilities. And to think, you were supposedly my father's best student. The blonde continued with a snarl. He would be ashamed at what you had become, Hatake Tem. A blatant contradiction to his teachings. Face it, Hatake Tem, you are trash. Those final words echoed within the mind of the cycloptic man as both Naruto and Anko laughed darkly as they faded away from his vision, dispelling into clouds of mist that intertwined with one another, all the while their laughter echoing within his ears, before taking form once more on the ground below as the rest of the members of Team 8 were finally arriving, leaving behind a stunned Kakashi. How the hell does he know how to use a shunshin? The masked man scowled, unaware that what the two had used was not a shunshin. Growling to himself, the silver-haired Jonin departed in his own shunshin. Morning everyone. Kurenai greeted her team as she entered the training field, eyeing the two vampires with an accusing glare. You two are behaving yourself, right? You wound me, Nai-chan. The whiskered vampire mocked being insulted. When have we not behaved when Anko-chan and I have been alone together? Do I really need to make a list about all the things you two have done? The ruby-eyed woman lightly glared at the two. Our first D-rank mission, at Konoha Textiles, Anko-san had pulled Naruto-san into the changing room, and proceeded to make out with him. Shino delivered in his usual monotone voice. In addition, the provocative loud moans Anko-san made, only served to garner the attention of the patrons within the store. That was one time, Anko defended, childishly crossing her arms in front of her chest in a mock pout. Then there was the time at the Gilded Rose restaurant and inn when you dropped butterscotch into the bartender's mixed drink. Sakura pointed out, recounting when their team had been sent to the establishment to help stock, clean, and in Anko and Kurenai's case, sample some of the drinks. First off, that was purely an accident when Anko-chan and I were wrestling around. Naruto trailed off when he realized his defense was not helping his case in the slightest. But hey, they got a very popular new drink out of the deal, so it worked out. While it is true that their new butter beer beverage is very popular among its patrons, it does not excuse the fact that you two were horsing around while we were on a mission. Kurenai lightly chastised the two vampires, though she really did enjoy the new drink that came of their fooling around. That's only two things, the whiskered blonde challenged, though from the expressions Kurenai and his fellow teammates had, he could tell they had an entire list of things they have yet to mention. Let's see, this week alone you two had already swapped out the apples with onions at the caramel apple snack stand on the main road. Kurenai began to list off the series of pranks the two had unleashed upon their unsuspecting victims, holding up her index finger to emphasize the point. Put fast-acting laxatives in the chocolate in the mixture of the local bakery, as well as some rather questionable, special, ingredients in the batter for their brownies. The genjutsu mistress raised 2 more fingers, bringing the current tally to 3. Making the store extremely popular for the rest of the day. Both Anko and Naruto couldn't help but giggle amongst themselves at the memory of that particular prank. And then there was that fiasco at the Inuzuka kennels, when the two of you, accidentally, sprayed poor Kiba with bottle of female hormones to encourage breeding amongst the pack. A fourth finger was raised, while the two of them struggled to hold in their laughter. As well as Sakura, whom was beginning to snigger at the outcome. Which resulted in a pack of large male Inuzuka wolf-hounds trying to mount Kiba. It only compounded the matters further when Sume had come out to see what the commotion was, and had fallen to the floor, laughing her off at the predicament her youngest child was in. In our defense, he was asking for it when he tried to proposition Anko-chan. Naruto stated. On a positive note, Kiba-san has become more humbled after that particular incident. Shino pointed out, since the feral boy had all but ceased any pursuit of any female after that. That is besides the point. The ruby-eyed woman stated with a sigh, turning her attention back to the pair of vampires. And not even 2 days ago, you two had showered the Yamanaka flower shop with highly concentrated mixture of lavender, chamomile, vanilla, jasmine, and valerian, which Sada Inochi, his wife, and anyone else that entered the shop for longer than 3 minutes fall asleep. That one was actually Ino-chan's idea. Anko pointed out, earning herself a light glare from her sister-like figure. What? She said her father was too stressed out and needed to relax more. Did I miss anything? Kurenai ground out. Well, this morning we put itching powder in the ANBU's uniforms, as well as sneezing powder in their masks, however we left Neko-ni-san alone. Naruto began, earning a groan from the genjutsu mistress. Oh, we also swapped out the old Mons porn book with a rather graphic yaoi novel. Anko added, though this particular bit of info prompted the team's Pinkett to gain a blush and a slight nosebleed. And we put timed paint bombs on the Hokage monument. The blonde vampire finished with a grin, which was mirrored by the snake mistress. Almost as if on cue, the sound of multiple small explosions could be heard in the distance as the faces of the village's previous Hokages were covered in a cloud of multicolored smoke. As the wind carried away the colorful dust and smoke, it revealed that all of the faces now had various Kumadori makeup. Each of the past Hokage's faces had been painted over, making them look like various kabukis. Wonder what we can do tomorrow to top this. Naruto mused out loud. Think that genjutsu is ready. Anko added, earning a thoughtful expression from the blonde. Let's just start today's training. Kurenai could only groan in resignation as the two of pariahs began to plot the next day's string of pranks. Sakura, you start off with the chakra control exercises I have you. Shino, work on your taijutsu with Anko-chan, and Naruto, you're with me to help identifying and breaking genjutsu. Team 7, Training Ground 3, later that day. Hinata Hyuga frowned slightly as she watched over the group of people that were scattered around the training ground, as their day of training was coming to a close. They were supposed to be her team, though that was being extremely generous calling them that. Since day one, their assigned sensei had shown blatant favoritism towards the Uchiha on the team, giving the Inuzuka and herself only vague instructions while he took the raven-haired teen away for more personalized training. She was fairly certain that if Kiba and herself didn't have their clans to fall back on for the necessary training required of them, they would be at a severe disadvantage compared to the rest of their fellow graduates. The week full of D-rank missions didn't prove to be any better, as Kakashi would laze around, reading that Kami-forsaken book of his, while the Uchiha would slack off, doing the absolute minimum. Leaving both Kiba and herself left to pick up the slack. As expected, once they had completed their tasks, meaning herself and Kiba, Kakashi and the client would heap praise upon the arrogant Uchiha for working so diligently. while the other members of the team were only given subpar credit for their contributions. While the Hyuga heiress had never considered herself a spiteful person, all of the special treatment the raven-haired emo received had made her sincerely wish the Kinslayer, Itachi Uchiha, would return and finish the job and spare her from having to constantly endure the arrogance the boy exuded. However, her desire to see the Uchiha clan completely wiped from the face of the elemental nations was not what was on her mind at the moment, well, at least not at the forefront of her thoughts. No, what had her attention now was her supposed sensei, Kakashi Hatake. For whatever reason the man had shown up even later than usual, much to the entire team's annoyance, one of the very few things all three of them could find a common ground on. To make matters even better, the masked Jonin seemed to be in a particularly upset mood when he had finally deigned it necessary to arrive. Foregoing his usual greeting and obnoxious excuse as to why he was late, he had immediately barked out instructions before disappearing with the Uchiha for the rest of their training duration. However, what plagued her mind at the moment about the masked Jonin was a lingering sense that she had seen him from somewhere before. Or rather, his hair to be more specific, as odd as it sounded. Though to be fair, it was one of his more identifiable physical features, aside from the way he covers his face. "All right, my cute little genin," Kakashi called out to them from his perch atop one of the posts. "That's it for today, report here at 6 in the morning tomorrow." So, would that be 6 our time, or his time? Both Kiba and Hinata thought at the same time. The Hyuga heiress didn't bother listening to the rest of what the silver-haired man had to say, knowing that it was just going to be the usual stuff. Which namely consisted on him dismissing both Kiba and herself while he held Sasuke back for additional training. Kami did she hate this team, especially since it put her at odds with finding out just what the hell had happened to Naruto 3 years ago. Or to answer her burning question as to who was that person that had drove that lightning jutsu into his chest. He had something about doing it for his sensei, before he struck Naruto-kun with that jutsu. Hinata narrowed her eyes in thought. What did he mean by that? So far, the only thing she was able to deduce from what she saw that night was that the individual that had delivered the final blow was male, and no doubt, an extremely skilled shinobi, perhaps Jonin or even Anbu level. Admittedly, she probably could have had all her questions answered that very night, if she had just been brave enough to stick around for a few more minutes, instead of running off in fear when she had thought her pillar of light had been killed. Only for him to arrive at the academy the following Monday, completely healthy. Initially, she had been overjoyed that he was still alive. However, that joy had quickly turned to concern as she slowly began to realize that something inside him had changed. No longer did he wear that bright orange jumpsuit that she loved, namely because it made him easier for her to spot, nor did he have that same warmth he once possessed that had drawn her to him. Instead, there was an aura of allure that surrounded him, but it felt unnatural to her. So, she had backed off and observed from a distance. While she sat there musing, she felt an odd sensation that she was being watched. Her first instinct was to look amongst her team, only to see them still focusing on Kakashi, whom had oddly enough, opted to share some of his past experiences while on unclassified missions. Seeing that it wasn't any of them, she began to observe her surroundings, until she spotted a mop of rosy pink hair. Focusing in on the strange girl, she took note of her appearance. The most obvious was the rosy pink color of her hair that was partially done up into 2 pigtails held up by a pair of black headpieces, somewhat resembling the appearance of bat wings. Her clothing was also odd to the Hyuga girl, consisting of a black, frilly-style dress with a layer of white ruffles over black ruffles of the skirt. The preteen girl's top had a raindrop-shape opening at the top of her chest, just above her budding cleavage with the straps of the top crisscrossing over each other and around the girl's neck to hold up the blouse. Her long, slender and pale arms exposed, showing off her flawless skin. Aside from her clothing, what Hinata found peculiar about the girl was her crimson-colored eyes. Crimson eyes that were staring right at her, causing her to shiver slightly. Kakashi-sensei. Hinata ventured to speak up, not taking her eyes off the strange girl. Who is that? Kakashi took a moment to look in the direction the young girl was looking in, and scowled under his mask as he saw the person in question that the Hyuga heiress was inquiring about. Turning back to his team, he could see the two boys curious as well. Surprisingly, Kiba was not drooling all over the girl like he would have almost a week ago, making the cycloptic Jonin ponder what could have caused such a change in the feral boy whom was always trying to show off how much of an alpha he was. That is Cruel Teps, sole member of the Teps family. The masked Jonin explained to his team. She moved into the village about 9 years ago with the Hokage's permission. She usually keeps to herself, so I don't know why she is out here. Wait, family, why not clan? Kiba asked, finding it odd that just some random survivor of a family would need the permission of the Hokage to settle into the village, unless they held some sort of political importance, or were extremely powerful. Whether it be from a Kekkei Genkei, possession of an extensive library of high-ranking jutsu, or something else that would benefit the village as a whole. Supposedly she possesses a unique and powerful Kekkei Genkei. Hearing this, Sasuke's ears perked up as he allowed his eyes to travel over to the form of the preteen girl, whom was now conversing with some red-haired woman he could vaguely recall visiting the academy for some reason or another. Kiba on the other hand had recognized the red-haired beauty and had quickly averted his eyes, much to the confusion of both Kakashi and Hinata. Do you know what her Kekkei Genkei is? The Uchiha inquired. If it proved to be strong enough, he would overlook the fact that she was a civilian and not a strong kunoichi and give her the honor to bear his children to repopulate his clan, and if her family was powerful and influential as it was implied she was, then all the better to benefit the Uchiha, as it should be. No, Kakashi replied, glancing to the now two women, his eyes narrowing at the red head. She looked too much like that Uzumaki whore that married his sensei, and robbed him of his second father figure after his own father had committed suicide. The only one that knows the full detail of the Teps family is the Hokage. Not even the councils are privy to what her family has to offer the village. Isn't that odd that the rest of the council would not be aware of a family or clan's potential within the village? Hinata asked. It is unusual, but not completely out of the Hokage's power to make such a decision without the knowledge or approval of the council. The masked Jonin shrugged. After all, the council is there to advise the Hokage, not tell him what he can and cannot do within his own village. Hinata remained silent, as she turned her attention back to the pink-haired girl. Back to the crimson eyes that were boring right into her own, giving the brunette an uneasy feeling about the girl. Almost as if this cruel Teps knew something about her, and her specifically as she was seemingly ignoring the rest of the team and focusing solely on her. That being said, I would advise you all to stay away from her. Kakashi stated, fully turning to the genin before him. I don't trust her. Aside from the Hokage, no one knows anything about her. Not even Jiraiya-sama was able to find anything about her family or her past before the Hokage ordered him to cease all investigations on her. Hinata frowned, not liking the sound of any of this. All the mystery surrounding Pinkett, and the fact that not even the village's spy master was able to dig up anything about the girl's family before the Hokage had ordered him to stop. What's the Dobi doing here? Sasuke asked as he glared at the whiskered blonde. This prompted the remaining members of the team and Kakashi to turn, only to be greeted by the sight of Naruto and Anko approaching the two young women they had just been talking about. Both Hinata and Kakashi narrowed their eyes, each for a different reason. For Hataki, it was because once again, the blonde was mocking him, just with his mere presence. For the Hyuga, however, she was suspicious. Kakashi had just told them how the Pinkett was reclusive and kept to herself, only speaking with the Hokage. However, here was Naruto and Anko both approaching and interacting with the preteen girl as if they were old friends, family even. Furthermore, the red head that accompanied the Tep's girl seemed to be subservient, mostly towards Naruto. Something that struck the Hyuga heiress as being odd. As she continued to observe the group, her eyes widened as she watched as Naruto reached out and caressed the Pinkett's cheek before leaning in and giving her a sensual kiss, causing an old sense of jealousy to flare up within the Hyuga once more. Unconsciously, she had activated her Byakugan only to sharply take in a breath of air at what she saw. Each of their chakra signatures looked off. Naruto's remained to be the solid purple, though now his chakra had black wisps floating outwards, touching and licking the other chakra signatures near him. Almost as if they were bound to one another. Anko's, on the other hand, had become similar to Ino's. Becoming a dark, crimson red with the same black wisps snaking around her signature, intertwining with the other black wisps exuding from the whiskered blonde. Furthermore, the parasitic chakra signature that had been located on the snake mistress's neck had completely vanished. The red head was an entirely different story. Her chakra signature was like a raging inferno of fiery red and orange, all compressed into one small form. It almost felt like she was looking into the sun, due to the sheer amount of power that was coming off the woman. Very faintly, the Hyuga girl could make out 9 individual strands coming out from behind the young woman, almost as if they were 9 tails attached to her. Lastly, there was the Pinkett herself, and the one that made Hinata's blood run cold in her veins. Her chakra signature, or rather, her complete lack of one, was void of all color. Just cold, and empty blackness, with more prominent dark tendrils flowing outwards from her body. It was clear that whoever this girl was, she was not human. Deactivating her Byakugan, Hinata watched as the group of people she had been observing depart from the area, all the while a new question burning within her mind. Just what are you, cruel Teps? The elder village leader casually puffed on his tobacco pipe while focusing his attention on 2 individuals that were currently in his office, before letting out a long stream of smoke from his nostrils. The 2 individuals in question were doing all the good to hold in their laughter, and failing to do so at that. All the while, the other 2 females in the room looked on in amusement. This entire pile is the result of the latest string of pranks carried out by the 2 of you, from just this week alone. Hiruzen gestured towards a small pile of scrolls on the corner of his desk. Caramel-covered onions, questionable ingredients added to the local bakery mixtures, dousing poor Kiba with hormonal spray while cleaning the Inuzuka kennels, which resulted in the poor boy being nearly mounted by the male canines. At this, the 2 busted out laughing at the memory of the unfortunate Alpha being forced to the ground when one of the large dogs had jumped on him. Off to the side, Cruel could be seen placing a delicate hand over her mouth to hide her own laughter while the vixen women to her side held a bemused grin on her face, having already had an encounter with the self-proclaimed Alpha weeks prior. Both of you then proceeded to flood the Yamanaka flower shop with a concoction of aromas that put Inochi and his wife to sleep for the remainder of the day, and anyone else who entered the shop after that. The elder village leader continued with a half-hearted scowl, as the man couldn't very well stay upset at the 2 pranksters. Lacing various members of ANBU's gear with itching and sneezing powder, with the exception of Neko. Defacing the Hokage monument with timed paint bombs. The Hokage took a deep breath, preparing himself. But your worst offense, by far. He began, narrowing his eyes at the 2. Was swapping my personal reading material for that thing. I swear to Kami, I will never be able to look at Kakashi and Guy the same way ever again. You're telling me. Anko shuddered slightly. Who the hell would write that crap featuring those two? I mean, I get that boy love is a genre popular with preteen girls, but Kakashi and Guy. Seriously. Author was someone by the name of Dorothy. Naruto shrugged. And it was either Kakashi and Guy or Jiraiya and Orochimaru, pick your poison. Hearing this, both Anko and Hiruzen felt their stomachs lurch. Let's move on, shall we? Hiruzen coughed, trying to get the taste of bile out of his mouth as he turned his attention towards the sole pink-haired vampiress. That time, huh? She inquired with a sadistic grin. That it is. The elder man nodded. Not only will we be announcing your union with Naruto-kun, we'll also be making the announcement of his heritage. That is going to send the flesh sacks into a frenzy. Anko chuckled as she imagined the protests various members of the council would raise. As such, while I know you would like to accompany Naruto-kun, I ask that you sit this meeting out, Anko-chan. Hiruzen sighed, earning a groan from the snake mistress. One headache at a time, if you will. Yeah. Anko brushed off the comment. Civilian shitbags are already going to toss a fit about Whiskers being named Cruel-chan's fiancé. Bet those bastards will really lose their shit when they learn that the snake whore is involved as well. Naruto scowled at this before turning to face his mate, cupping her cheeks in his hands while earning a small blush from the snake mistress. You know that none of us think of you like that, Anko-chan. He stated firmly. So don't pay any mind to what those rancid blood sacks think about you. These are the same dumb asses that couldn't tell the difference between the prisoner and the warden. No offensive Yoko-chan. He quickly followed up on, looking towards the kitsune woman, scratching the back of his head sheepishly. None taken, Naruto-kun. The vixen smiled, knowing that her former host meant no harm in his statement. Fear not, Anko-chan. Cruel spoke up with a grin. When the time comes to reveal your relationship with our mate, you may hold your head up high as a proud coven sister of the Tep's name. This earned a fanged grin from the snake mistress. While she had intended to poke fun at the council's inevitable reaction, it was a relief to see her lover and fellow coven sister support her and help ease her insecurities. We'll meet up later. Naruto smiled, giving the perplet a kiss on the corner of her lips. Perhaps even go out hunting tonight, still a few of the untouchables we haven't tracked down yet. A shiver went down the snake mistress's spine upon hearing the promise of going out on another hunt. Allowing a bloodthirsty grin to spread across her lips, exposing her fangs, as she brought the whiskered vampire into a tight hug, burying the poor teen's face in her. Oh Naruto-kun, she whispered seductively into his ear. You know the exact thing to say to excite a girl. Show me a good time and I'll give you a reward tonight, Naruto-kun. Emphasizing her point by licking along his earlobe before she dissipated into a cloud of mist and drifted out the window. Earning a small giggle from the elder vampiress and the kitsune woman, all while Naruto was blushing up a storm. At any rate, Hiruzen coughed, snapping the blonde vampire out of his embarrassment. Let us proceed, I am sure you all other stuff you would rather do today. With a nod, Naruto followed behind the old man, accompanied by his sire and lover, and the vixen. Council chambers. Mumbling echoed throughout the large room as various members that made up the civilian side of the council had made their displeasure known to one another about a meeting being called, some of which even had the audacity to claim that the Hokage should have gotten their permission first before calling such a meeting, much to the annoyance of the other council members. After a few more minutes, the large double doors opened, revealing the village leader and a young-looking pink-haired woman, that many within the room had identified as the enigmatic cruel Teps that resided within the village walls in a rather large and private estate on the outskirts of the village. Her presence piqued the interest of all in the room, as did the presence of the other unknown woman that seemed to accompany the picket that seemed familiar to many of them. However, any interest they had quickly soured when they noticed the fourth individual entering the room, standing too close to the young woman for many of the civilian and elders' liking. Hiruzen, what is the purpose of this meeting and why is that boy here? Inquired a portly-looking man, earning a glare from the village leader. You would do well to remember not to converse with me in such a casual manner, councilman. Hiruzen growled, leaking out a small amount of killer intent, forcing the man to shrink in his seat. You forget that this is a dictatorship, and I am the dictator. If I decide to call a meeting at 3 in the Kami-forsaken morning to discuss how the grass grows, you will attend in your sleepwear and a smile on your face. Am I clear? The elder village leader emphasized his point by leaking out a considerable amount of killer intent, mostly focused towards the civilian council, earning a shaky nod in understanding from each of them. Satisfied that he had made his point quite clear, Hiruzen took his position at the head of the table. Now, to answer your question as to the purpose of this meeting. He began as he produced a scroll from his robes and placed it on the table, earning curious looks from a majority of those present. Since young Naruto Uzumaki has graduated from the academy and has been officially registered as a genin of Konoha, under Jonin Kurenai Yuhi, I have deemed it proper to release his heritage to the public. This caught the attention of everyone in the room with varying reactions. The majority of the civilian side scowled at the announcement, with the exception of a blonde-haired woman with emerald green eyes whom had only gave a knowing smirk in response. The shinobi side was a mixture of stoic faces in the forms of Hiyashi Hyuga and Shibi Aburame and the feral excitement from Sum Inuzuka. Meanwhile Shikaku Nara just muttered, troublesome, from his position, face down on the table. Lastly, there were the three elders, that were Hiruzen former teammates being Homura Mitokado and Kaharu Udatane, and a rival in the form of Danzo Shimura and advisors to the Hokage. The former two had neutral expressions while the latter had a hint of disappointment in his eyes. Forgive me Hokage-sama. The blonde-haired woman interrupted politely. But could you please explain as to why young Uzumaki-san's heritage was hidden to begin with? Hiruzen paused and looked around the room to see that a majority of civilian council members were curious as to why he would have gone through the lengths to hide the boy's heritage. Which only further raised the question as to who the boy's parents were that would require such an action. I suppose it does warrant some explanation. The elder village leader conceded. The reason why Naruto-kun's heritage was made secret is due to the fact that both of his parents were not only well-respected and powerful members of our shinobi forces, but both his mother and father also made lots of enemies both within and outside the village. This piqued the civilian council's interest, many of which began to conspire that if the boy's parents had acquired such a reputation and hopefully wealth, they could no doubt use it to their own benefit. Enough to even overlook the boy's status, if only a little. Now, without further delay, the Sandaime began, getting everyone's attention as he picked up the scroll and opened it, revealing multiple papers. Here are copies of the birth certificate for one Naruto Uzumaki. The elder village leader proceeded to pass the stack off to the individual to his left, whom happened to be Sum Inuzuka, instructing each member to take one of the papers and pass it to the next person on their left. Hiruzen waited until all members of the council had a copy of the certificate before finally making the announcement. Now that everyone has a copy, I am proud to announce that young Uzumaki's parents are none other than Kushina Uzumaki and the Yondaime Hokage himself, Minato Namikaze. Hiruzen announced to the room. Noting their reaction upon the announcement, coupled with the written documentation that was in their hands. Some stared in disbelief, while others were in obvious denial and some, though small in number, expressed regret. Naruto Uzumaki, since you have not only graduated from the academy at the top of your class, earning the title of Rookie of the Year, as well as successfully working with your genin team to officially earn your Hitai 8. The aging village leader began with a proud smile as he turned to the young genin as he produced another larger scroll from his robes and presented it to the whiskered blonde. As such, you have met all of the requirements left by your father to claim your inheritance. Technically it was a lie, as Minato had wanted his son to at least earn the rank of Chunin before he could be given his inheritance, if only to ensure his son was strong enough to take care of himself in the event his old enemies reared their heads once more. Though in retrospect, rank was moot point when trying to measure the young vampire's strength. Thank you, Hokage-sama. Naruto accepted the scroll with a slight bow, a rare show of respect for the elder man's title reserved only for official settings, such as this. The sound of soft applause echoed throughout the room, as even those who were in denial of the boy's heritage still felt pressured by the other occupants to extend their hollow congratulations. Others members of the civilian council felt this was a grand opportunity for untold riches. I moved to place Uzumaki-sama in the clan restoration act. The same portly councilman from before motioned, earning a series of nods of agreement from his fellow civilian council members. The bloodline within Uzumaki-sama could boost any offspring he were to have. The increased chakra pools and density of the chakra of the Uzumaki could be a great help for all the clans his blood would be linked to. This will make the village shinobi proficient in their usage of chakra and jutsu, coupled with the fact that the Yotami's blood flows through him as well. Another civilian added, earning himself a series of excited murmurs from the others. I am sure many of us have daughters close enough to his age that would be suitable to bring back the Uzumaki clan. As a matter of fact, isn't your daughter on his team, Mebuki-san? Respectfully, my daughter is her own person and will not be pressured to pursue anyone, regardless of their social status, against her will. Mebuki stated with a frown, not liking that she was put on the spot in front of the entire council, let alone trying to manipulate her or to use her daughter as a political pawn in the game for power and wealth. Ahem. A delicate feminine voice interrupted, turning the attention to the young vampiress. I'm afraid I will have to object. What do you mean that you object? The council member inquired, clearly insulted at the audacity of the enigmatic woman. It's not like you have claim to the boy. And that is where you are mistaken, councilman. Hiruzen stated with a smirk, earning a series of confused looks. Miss Tepps, the floor is yours. Thank you, Hokage Dono. Cruel gave a polite smile to the elder man as she moved to stand by her chosen mate. Many of those present noted the exchange between the young woman and the Hokage with a sense of curiosity. I suppose introductions are in order, she began. I am Cruel Tepps, sole heiress and surviving member of the Tepps family. The same Tepps family that used to own the entirety of the elemental nations centuries ago. Shika inquired lazily from his spot at the table, though anyone who was familiar with the elder Nara could hear a tinge of anticipation in his voice. The very same. The pink-haired vampiress giggled. I am glad to see my family's name hasn't been completely forgotten. Many of the records were lost during the clan wars that ensued afterwards. An unfortunate result of dividing the lands. Shika yawned, content that he received his answer. Unfortunate. Cruel sighed, before turning her attention back to the rest of the occupants in the room. As some of you may have heard from Hiruzen Dono, I moved into the village some 9 years ago, not only to settle down after my travel of the elemental nations, but in search of a proper candidate. Forgive my interruption, Tepps-san. Inoichi spoke. What do you mean by proper candidate? Why, for a husband of course. She replied bluntly, which made it clear to everyone in the room why she objected to the whiskered blonde from being placed in the CRA. And after carefully considering potential suitors, I chose Naruto-kun. To emphasize her point, she grasped hold of the Uzumaki's hand, pulling him slightly closer to her. Blushing lightly as he gave the back of her hand a gentle kiss. While I mean no disrespect to Uzumaki-sama or your choice in partners, Homura began, clearly unimpressed with the young woman's choice. Why not Sasuke-sama? Surely you have heard of how skilled he is and as well as how mighty the Uchiha clan once were. Ah yes. Cruel scoffed, not even wanting to understand why members of the council were so hung up on a child that only thought of what others could give him. I have seen your Uchiha, measured his worth and found him lacking. The spectacled elder seemed to take offense to her words, but wisely held his tongue. Silently, he eyed his fellow elder council members for assistance, only to find his female counterpart neutral in this debate while Danzo seemed to be preoccupied by something unspoken. I see. Homura reluctantly conceded, seeing as he had no support to move forward with. Still, perhaps another chance would present itself to salvage this for his own benefit. Now, Teps turned her attention back to the rest of the council once more. Let me state that I will not deny Naruto-kun the right to bring the Uzumaki clan, if he so wishes. Then why did you object to Uzumaki-sama being placed in the Clan Restoration Act? The portly councilman inquired. Simple. Naruto spoke up, placing his hand on Cruel's shoulder in an affectionate gesture. We will not allow your daughters to be used as political pawns for you to use to gain wealth and power. I will bring back my clan, but it will be on our terms, not yours. Many of the civilian council members, with the exception of a few, bristled at this and would have spoken out if not for the subtle amount of killing intent coming from the elder village leader that forced them to hold their tongues. Meanwhile, those of the Shinobi Council were impressed with the young blonde's maturity. Well spoken, Naruto-kun. Cruel smiled approvingly. You said that you will bring back the Uzumaki clan on your own terms. Inoichi stated. Does this mean you already have potential candidates to assist in its rebirth? Naruto couldn't help but mentally smirk at the question. While it was phrased in a polite manner, the blonde vampire knew the real reason the elder mind walker was asking. The protective father was fishing for confirmation as to the identity of the boy his little princess was interested in, no doubt to have a talk with the boy about his daughter. We do have a two that are being courted. Cruel answered before eyeing the disguised vixen behind her. Maybe a third, though she has been shy about it. Yoko tried to fight back the blush at the insinuation. However, only the Hokage and the prospect's parents will be notified should anything come to fruition. Cruel commented with a smirk, knowing this upset various council members in the room between the civilian and elder members. I bet one of them is that snake whore he is always hanging around with. One of the civilians whispered with contempt, earning himself a glare from not only Naruto and Cruel, but also Yoko and the Hokage himself. I would advise you to keep such thoughts to yourself, councilman. Hiruzen growled, leaking another dose of killing intent towards the guilty party. Lest you find yourself expelled from your position. A moment of tense silence followed for a handful of seconds before the elder village leader let up his killing intent, turning back to the matter at hand. Now, as Hokage of Konohagakure, I now place Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze under the Clan Restoration Act, and stress that it will be under his own terms. Anyone caught trying to manipulate or intimidate prospects will be met with a swift and severe repercussion. Congratulations, my boy. Hiruzen smiled at Naruto before turning back to the council. Now, before I adjourn this session, is there any business that must be discussed? I have a personal matter that I feel must be addressed. Danzo spoke up as he reached into his robe and produced a small stack of letters and placed them on the table. For the last 3 months, I have been receiving no less than 200 letters at my home, in my office and even in my private quarters. The latest one reads as such. Dear self-important warmonger. I wanted to send you this friendly little letter to inform you of your imminent demise. If you're curious about the frequency of which I've been sending these letters, it is merely to instill as much fear as I can. As if basting a turkey. Which I will then proceed to have with. That's right. I'm going to the fear turkey. Sincerely. The Crimson. Silence echoed throughout the room, as no one knew how to respond to what was written on the letter. Though as the silence lingered, the sound of restrained sniggering could be heard coming from the form of Sume Inuzuka, whom could be seen desperately trying and failing to keep her laughter in. I see. Hiruzen blinked in bewilderment, though cast a subtle glance towards the whiskered blonde. A rather amusing prank, Naruto-kun. Naruto-kun, the Sandame turned fully to the genin. Both you and Miss Teps are excused, enjoy the rest of the day. I'll be sure to have my Anbu notify the village of your rightful status. Thank you, Hokage-sama. Naruto bowed one last time, alongside Cruel and Yoko before the trio exited the room, leaving the council to figure out who the perpetrator of the letters was. After ensuring that they were well away from any prying ears, Cruel couldn't help but smirk at her blonde-haired mate. Naruto-kun, don't you think that prank was a little too immature and childish? She lightly chastised. While she found the prank against the elder war hawk amusing, she still felt it was a little too lowbrow. Perhaps. Naruto shrugged with a grin of his own. But this prank served two purposes. First was to annoy and irritate, making him more likely to expose himself, which he almost did in the council. Secondly, and more importantly, I've been using the letters to poke at his defenses as well as spy on his movements. You have Fuinjutsu seals on the letters? Yoko inquired, earning another smirk from the Uzumaki. Yup. The whiskered vampire acknowledged. Listening seals, locating seals and mapping seals. Since he keeps a few letters on him at all times for evidence, I almost have a complete mapping of his underground base. Just gotta determine how many root operatives he still has in play. I must say, I am impressed, Naruto-kun. Cruel admitted. When do you plan to report this to the old man? Hopefully in a few weeks. Naruto frowned. Danzo is about to meet with someone from outside the village, someone Anko-chan knows, Orochimaru. Silence hung between the three for a handful of seconds, as they knew that the bandaged elder was no doubt planning something with the traitorous snake. No doubt a bid to remove the old man and implant himself as Hokage of the village. And one didn't need to live as long a Cruel to see what kind of dark path that man would lead the village down. Anko-chan is not going to like this. Cruel commented. Agreed. Naruto sighed. The logical course would be not to tell her. Yoko offered, though it was half-heartedly. Maybe, but it would be best to be honest with her to prepare her. The whiskered blonde replied. I'll take care of it. As the trio fell into another silence, they made their way out of the Hokage's tower and into the busy streets of the village, ignoring the various looks the villagers would send their way. It seems the Anbu were already fast at work notifying the public of his heritage, now that it had been revealed. Yes, things were going to get very interesting for the young vampire in the coming days. Hyuga Estate, Clan Library. Hinata let out a bored yawn as she rolled up another scroll and placed it on top of the growing pile of scrolls of various sizes tucked away in her clan's private library. Ever since she saw the aura that surrounded that cruel woman, the Hyuga heiress was relentless in her pursuit of unraveling the meaning behind that black aura. It wasn't natural. There has to be something here. She groaned out loud as she began searching the rows of cases once more. However, as she combed through her family's massive library, she paused. Perhaps she was looking in the wrong category for her answer, since she was focusing on chakra natures which mostly leaned towards the elemental manipulation. Perhaps what she should be focusing on is chakra signatures. With a new focus, Hinata turned on her heel and proceeded towards the censor section of the library, leaving behind the cluttered pile of scrolls. Let's see, she mused as the pale-eyed Kunoichi browsed through the bookshelf, feeling a sense of frustration build up as nothing immediately popped out in which she was looking for. Just as she was about to give up, the sound of a single scroll hitting the ground caught her attention. Turning to the offending object, Hinata frowned as she didn't recognize this particular scroll ever being in her family's library. It was too gaudy with its small size, purple coloring and gold trim. Though what stood out the most was the fact that the kanji seemed to glow in the light. Giving it a once-over with her Byakugan, to ensure there were no nasty surprises, she grasped the scroll and slowly opened it. Reading over the seemingly glowing text, her eyes widening in disbelief. Whereas it wasn't so much as an informative text, but rather an invitation to the Tep's estate next week, in the morning hours. This could be a trap. Hinata frowned as she thought to herself. But it's my only chance to find out what happened to Naruto-kun and what her connection with him is, as well as that red-headed woman. Alright Tep-san, I accept. She spoke out loud. As if taking her spoken acceptance of the invitation as its cue, the gaudy scroll flew from the Hyuga's hand and disappeared into a puff of smoke, leaving behind a bewildered but determined Hinata. She would get her answers.